Welcome. My name is David, and today I'm going to be guiding you through the ACT 403, and we're going to go over all 45 questions. All right, let's begin. Question 1. So, if -1 is less than a, which is less than 0, which of the following describes the relationship between a cubed and a to the 4? So you can pick a number like a is -1/2, and then plug it in. So if you do -1/2 cubed, that's going to be a negative number. Specifically, it's -1/8. And if you do -1/2 to the 4th, that's going to be a positive number, because whenever you raise a negative number, take a negative number and raise it to an even power, it's going to be positive. So this is 1/16. So I know that 1/16, since it's positive, is greater than -1/8. So the answer should be B. You can go through all of them to check them to make sure that indeed that is the case. Question number 2. Julie buys 3 pounds of apples and 76 per pound, and 2 pounds of carrots at 48 per pound. So we're going to do 3 times 0.76 plus 2 times 0.48. She then sells all of the apples and carrots for 60 cents per pound. So that was 3 plus 2. So then she buys and then sells. Looks like it's going to be a total of 5 pounds times 60 cents. All right. And how much does she gain or lose in this transaction? So taking your calculator out, multiply it out. You get 3.24. And then 6 times 5 is 30. So I know this is going to be $3. So normally you want to buy low and sell high, but in this case, she bought high and sold low. So in this case, she's going to be losing 24 cents on this transaction because she paid $3.24, but she sold it for $3. So the answer is D. Question number 3. This is simplifying exponents. Just remember, when you are dividing bases, you subtract the powers, but in the case of the coefficients, you look for common factors to take out. So I know 12 is divisible by 4, so we get 3 on top. And they all have a 3 on top, so that didn't help us. Next on the list, x to the 6 over x cubed is going to be x to the 6 minus 3, which is 3. So it's not going to be A. B looks pretty good. It has an x cubed on top, so does C, but D, I made a mistake of dividing the exponents. Next on the list is y, so we have y to the 6 minus 2, which is y to the 4th. So that looks good for B and C. And lastly, z is going to be -2 minus 5, which is going to be -7. But it's not 3, so we can cross off B. And then the answer must be C. And that makes sense that z would go on the bottom, because negative exponents will, they change their sign of the exponent when you go from one side of the division bar to the other. So I could leave it on top as z to the -7, or I can put it on the bottom as z to the +7. And that's why the answer is C. Question number 4. 3x plus 9y is equal to 15. What is 4x plus 12y? Well, there's no way to solve this problem for x and y because there's not any numbers. There's not 2 equations given. But there's a couple ways we could do it. One, you could make up a number, like pretend x is 0, then y is 15/9, and then plug it in. That's one way. Alternatively, you could be a little clever about this. If we divide everything by 3, we get x plus 3y is equal to 5. And then if we multiply everything by 4, we get 4x plus 12y is equal to 20, which conveniently is what we're looking for. So definitely 2 ways to approach it. One, plug in numbers. I recommend simple numbers, like plugging in 0 for x or 0 for y and solving and seeing which ones work, but you have to check all of them. This was a clever way of changing the form or the structure of the expression into it matches what we have here. So yeah, hope you found that helpful. Question number 5. Jim earns 8% commission on every box of candy he sells. Okay, every box he sells for $50. All right, so it looks like his commission is 8% of 50. If Jim was paid $14,000 in commissions, how many boxes do you sell? Well, then we times this by the number of boxes, and then that will equal 14,000. So 8% of 50 is $4. You can use your calculator too. It'd be 0.08 times 50. So it's $4 commission for every box he sells, and he made 14,000. So we're going to divide by 14,000 by 4. And we get 3,500 boxes. We could have also estimated that too, because 1,000 times 4 is not close to 14,000. So whereas 3,000 times 4 is 12,000, so that's much closer. And estimation is a good dear friend on the ACT since it's always multiple choice. Question number 6, perfect. The San Diego Drive-In with their charges $10 for each car and $4 for each occupant in the car. So I can imagine I have a formula, 10 times C plus 4 times each person. I'm going to use N for the number of people in the car. If P people and C cars, okay, so instead of using N, I should probably use P. To move a drive-in, which of the following expressions describes the total dollars that the drive-in received than ticket sales on Friday? Well, it's 10C plus 4P. So let's look for that. So that's 10P, so it's not A, but C looks perfect. So C is the correct answer. Question number 7. Given that A is greater than or equal to -3, so it could be -3, it could be -2, non-word. It could also be decimals too. A plus B is less than or equal to 7. All right, so that is very specific. So kind of one of the things we're going to probably be playing around with is the types of integers. What's the greatest possible value for B? Well, I mean, I could try 2 numbers, right? So if I try A and B, if this is -3, B must be 10 to make it less than or equal to 7. If I try a number greater than -3, such as 0, then 0 plus B is less than or equal to 7, so B would have to be 7. So now I notice that when A is small, then B can be big. And that's one of the things that is typically true when you have terms on the same side. If you want one of them to be big and the other one to be small, the other one to be big, the other one has to be small. Now be careful of that because sometimes they do subtraction and then that's the exact opposite. So for example, if you have A minus B less than or equal to 7, you'd want B to be actual B to be big, so that way it would make it overall seem small. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, for this one, we got A is -3, then B is 10, and the answer is D. What is the smallest number that can be divided evenly by 8, 15, and 12? Well, there is a button on your calculator that can do 2 terms at a time. So you can do 8 and 15, which would give us 120. And then you could then take that answer and do LCM of 120 and 12, and that will give you 120. So that's one option. There is a way to do it with any number of factors, and that is use prime factorization. So 8 is 2 times 2 times 2, or 2 cubed. 15 is 3 times 5. And 12 is 2 times 2 times 3, or 2 squared times 3. And so the rule is you take the greatest number of each prime factor. And if they're tied, you take one of them and cross off the other. So in this case, I only see 1, 5. So I'm going to write that down. Next, I see there's a 3 here to the power of 1 and a 3 here to the power of 1. Since they're tied for the same number of 3's, I take one of them and cross off the other. Now this is where it gets interesting for the 2's. There are 2 2's here because it was 2 times 2. And there are 3 2's here because it's 2 times 2 times 2. So since there are more 2's here, I'm going to take all of these 2's, put it right here, and cross off these ones. Now, if you multiply this all out, you get 120. Alternatively, you can take each of these answer choices and look for the smallest number that is divisible by all 3 of these. And so you can start with the smallest, you can start with the biggest. If you can do anything off the top of your head, that's definitely pretty powerful. So for example, if they had another option here like F or E saying that they had 3, well, I know 3 is not going to be divisible by 8 because 3 is smaller than 8. So that would be something you could cross off immediately. But yeah, so definitely use the answer choices, use your calculator, or use this technique to solve these type of problems on the ACT. Question number 9. The temperature in Fahrenheit is given by this equation. where TC is the temperature in Celsius. If the temperature in Tucson, Arizona is 87 degrees, what's the temperature in Celsius? So what I could do first is I could plug the number in and then solve for TC, or I could solve for the TC first and then plug in the numbers. I'm going to use SADMEP to solve for TC first. SADMEP is PEMDAS spelled backwards, and it tells me what order of operations to do when I'm solving for a variable. So I'm first going to take care of the adding. So I'm going to subtract that to the other side. Next, I'm going to take care of multiplication and division. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 5/9. So it looks something like this right now. 5/9 times TF minus 32 is equal to TC. Now it's all ready to go for me to plug in my answer. So 5/9 times 87 minus 32. And what does that equal? Well, just quickly, this looks like about 55, and then I'm dividing by 9, so it's probably going to be close to, I'd probably say like 8 or so, 7.5. 7.5 times 5 is probably going to be 30. It's too high to be 70, and it's too small to be 16. So I'm guessing it's B. But we have a calculator so we can verify. But if you can practice your estimation skills, that can help you. All right, so I did get this right. It was 55. And then we're going to do 55 divided by 9 times 5, which is 30.5 degrees Celsius. Perfect. Now, also, if you just randomly use Celsius and Fahrenheit, you could understand like, hey, 69 degrees, that is pretty hot. That's going to be close to, I would say, gosh, 60 times 2, 120, 100, like about 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really hot. And then 16 is like much closer to like 70 degrees, 60 degrees, so much cooler temperature. So little things that can help you solve these types of questions. Question number 10. At Central High School, the ratio of males to females is 7:9. Now, for these type of problems, they tend to give you two groups, but usually you want to do a third group called the total. And that also makes sense if it makes sense to add these ratios together. And in this case, the number of males plus number of females would be 16. You don't have to always do that, but they're very common on the ACT. Next, it then says there's a total of 1,008 students. So now it was a good thing I did that because that sets this up. And I can solve for the number of females, which I'm going to just call X. So then 9 over X is equal to 16 over 1,008. You could also do the other way around. X over 9 is equal to 1,008 over 16, whatever floats your boat. In order to get X by itself, I'm going to multiply this side by 9. And then that looks like about half of 1,000. So it's probably one of these two. And looking at this, there were more females than males, so it's probably going to be 5, 6, 7. But we can double check. Yep, 5, 6, 7 is correct. So little tricks like that can help you do well. It's because there's more than half females, and so 500 with the total. So that'd be a really quick way of solving this problem. All right. So next on the list is this is a combination question. So there's going to be multiple questions associated with this graphic. But according to the chart, what's the probability that silver medal was American? So that's of silver medals that they were American and they use this symbol for and in statistics, but you could also use the word and if you like. Silver medal. Okay, so let's go through it. So looking at the graph, the silver is the middle one, and that looks like 750 to me. So the top is 750, and we then have to divide by all those silver medals. So 750 for the Americans, and then Great Britain has 300, and Russia has 500. Okay, so then that's going to be 750 over, looks like 1550. So I'd look for something that's approximately half. 1550. So I got 0.48, which is definitely not exactly half, but pretty close. So you can also use your button to convert fractions into decimals. And if you do that, you get 15 over 31 very quickly. You could also type in all the answer choices and pick the ones that are closer to half first. So 5 or 16 is not that close to half, it's closer to a quarter. 5 or 32 is closer to 1/8. So those are kind of good estimations to figure out which one to plug in to your calculator. All right, what is the ratio of gold medalists to British gold medals? So gold medalists for the US is about 1,000. And British gold medalists, it looks like approximately 250. And it said gold to British, so that's why it's 1,000 to 250. Now you can write like that. You could also write it as a fraction. So sometimes they do both colon and fractions. So that looks like it's 4-1, which is why the answer is 4-1. The US awards $25,000 to winners of gold medals, 15,000 to silver medals, and 10,000 to bronze medals. Approximately how much money in millions? That seems important later on to the US award. So we know that there were 750 silver medalists, so they get 15 grand. And then the gold medalists, there was looks like 1,000 of them, so they get 25,000. And then lastly, the bronze, they have about, I'm gonna say 650. And then they each get 10,000. So if I plug this all into my calculator, I'll have it in dollars. So quick thing to do is take all of this and divide it by 1 million. So that's going to be 6 zeros. Now, something else you could do that would make your math go a bit faster is that you could divide everything by 1,000. So I'll take off the 3 zeros there, 3 zeros there, and 3 zeros there. You can do more if you like, but it's something that that'd be less zeros to type into your calculator and less likely to make a mistake. So, and if you do that, you get $42.75 million. So if you got 42 million, you forgot to convert it to millions. So, yeah, pretty good question, but make sure to watch out and make sure to take your time to comprehend the question. Don't ignore the words. The words are pretty important, both the SAT and ACT tests. Question number 14. If x squared minus 6x is equal to negative 10x, what is the value of x? Well, there's two ways to do this. One, you can just take in these answer choices and plug them in until you get one that works. So sometimes that's faster for some people. For another case, you could graph them on your graphing calculator and see where it hits the x-axis and then take those two x values. You could lastly set this equal to 0. And if you did that by adding 10x to both sides, you'd get x squared plus 4x is equal to 0. And you could do a quick factoring thing. From here, we get x is 0 and negative 4. So we get two solutions, but there's only going to be one solution here. And so that's why the answer was A. So yeah, all those would work. Question number 15. A gymnastics team is attempting to set a new record for the largest human pyramid. The top level consists of a single person. Each level has 2 fewer people below it. So top person's 1, and then we have 2 fewer people. So then that'd be 3, and then 4, 5. So like in my head, it's like, all right, cool. We have the level and then people. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 5. So that looks like an arithmetic sequence to me. The previous level was 11. So how many people are needed to break the record? So the question is asking about how many people do we need? So we could probably find this term right here. The equation for an arithmetic sequence is the same as a linear model. So in most math classes, we do this formula. But you have learned the point slope formula, which is going to be taking the y1 plus the slope times x minus x1. So it's the same idea. So for this formula, I'm going to use the top equation. So when n is 1, the value is 1, and the difference is going up by 2 each time. And we're going to do n minus 1 to set up the equation. Well, we know when a was 11, it'd be 1 plus 2 times 10, so that's 21. And so in order to break the record, we need to go to level 12, which means that there's going to be 23 people added to this group. But you notice none of the answers are saying that number. So that's telling us we want the total number of people to break the record. So you can use your graphing calculator to find the sum, but you could just do it by hand. The arithmetic sum formula is going to be represented by the number of terms divided by 2, and then the first term plus the last term in the sequence. So in this case, since we need 12 people, we're going to do 12 over 2. The first term was 1, and the 12th term was 23 people. By the way, some people like to think about, instead of doing n over 2, they like to think of it being the average of the terms times the number of terms. Because you can divide either the first thing by 2 or the last thing by 2. Just remember not to divide both by 2. But from here, we get 144 people. And that is the number of people would be needed to break this record. Andy is shopping around for a cell phone plan. Plan A costs $2 and 0.03 dollars per month. And plan B costs 3 plus 0.02 D. Where D is the number of megabytes used that month. What is the minimum number of megabytes Andy would have to use to make plan B cheaper? So that means B is less than A. All right, so we're going to take the equation for B and make it less than 2 plus 0.03 D. Subtract 2 and subtract 0.02 D. And we're left with 1 is less than 0.01 D. Divide both sides by 0.01. And on your calculator, you get D is greater than 100. So 100 is right there as the trap, but we want the number of bigots that would make it not the same price, but cheaper. So that's why we had to pick D for this answer. So keep an eye out for those inequalities. Question number 17. F of x is a polynomial, and f of x equal to f of negative x, where x is 0, 2. Okay, what does that mean then? Well, that means that f of 0 is equal to 0, that f of 2 is equal to 0, but because we have this extra rule here, we know that f of negative 2 is equal to 0. What if volume must be another 0? Oh, well, negative 2. So it seems weird, but it has a very quick answer. Question number 18. If the cube root of x is equal to 1/2 the square root of x, what must be the value of x? So like we saw earlier, you could definitely plug in each of these answers and see which one works. And even still, like I might do that. Like 1 is so easy to plug in. The cube root of 1 does not equal 1/2 of 1. So I know B is out. How about C? Well, the cube root of 8 is going to be 2, and that does not equal 1/2 of the square root of 8. You can't take an even, the square root of 8 does not simplify into an integer. So C is out. What about 64? Well, the cube root of 64 is 4, and 1/2 of the square root of 64, well, that's going to be 1/2 of 8, which that is the answer. Now, what if you want to solve it by hand? Well, it's pretty easy to do it too. X to the 1/3 is equal to 1/2 x to the 1/2. Put the x's on the same side. So if I divide, I mean, you can go either way, divide the x to the left or the x to the right. But if I divide both sides by x to the 1/2, I then get x to the negative 1/6 is equal to 1/2. And then how do you get rid of that negative 1/6? It's easy. You raise it by the reciprocal. You type that into your calculator, and what you're going to get? 64. So again, fractional exponents are scary for a lot of students, but it's actually really easy to do, and that means you don't have to worry about where is the 6th root button on your calculator. So take some time to absorb that, but again, you can plug in the values too. It's a multiple choice test, and this question said, what is the value for x? Question 19. Kira has returned to do well in her physics final. She has exactly 21 days to study. She starts studying by completing 3 problems on the first day, solves 2 more on each one. So first, the days and the problems. So day 1, she had 3. Day 2, she did 2 more, so she's at 5. Day 3 would be 7. That's called recursion, by the way, where you use a pattern to figure out what the next one would be. How many problems will she have completed by the time of her final? Well, once again, it's not asking how many problems will she complete on the day of her final, which is day 21, but how many total will she do? Well, we saw this earlier with the arithmetic sequence formula. So I'm going to use A1 plus D times n minus 1. The first term is still 3. The difference is 2. And then we're going to do 21 minus 1. And so that means on the 21st day, she's going to have 3 plus 40, or 43 questions. But we don't want to stop there and pick A. We want to do then the sum formula. So this is how we get to the final. Arithmetic sum is, the last time I did n over 2. This time we're going to do it first term plus last term over 2, also known as the average of the terms. So then we would have a total of 21 terms. And then the first term is 3, because she had 3 problems. On the 21st day, she did 43. Divide that by 2. And we get 21 times 23, which is 483. So pretty quick. So, but again, you have to know these higher level math concepts. But it's pretty, again, they keep repeating over and over again. So keep trying and keep practicing. Adams find to fill a rectangular swimming pool with which is 22 feet long, 16 feet wide, with water stored in an 8-foot wide cylinder water tank that's full of water. If he wants to fill the pool to a depth of 7, what's the minimum length of the tanker? Okay, so it says rectangular, but because we have width, length, and depth, that sounds like it's a rectangular prism. And the volume of a rectangular prism is length times width times height. So we can do 22 times 16 times 7. All right, but then how are we filling it? It's using a cylindrical water tank. We don't have a reference formula, so you do need to know the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. Well, what's h and what's r in this case? Well, the cylinder tank looks kind of like this, where there's like the wheels on here, and there's like the front of the truck here. But I'm going to say that the length of the tanker here is really going to be the height. And then they gave us the 8-foot wide cylindrical tank. So that sounds like the diameter is 8. So because we have diameter given, we're going to have to divide that by 2 to get to radius. All right, now I think I have a clear plan of attack. I'm going to set the two lines equal to each other. So 22 times 16 times 7 is equal to pi times 16, because 4 squared, times h, or the length in this case. Well, really quickly, the 16s cancel off, and then 22 divided by pi is about 7. 7 times 7 is 49. So I don't think it's A or B. Well, let's check the calculator. 22 divided by pi times 7. Yeah, it's 49.01. So C is the right answer. Question 21. An 11-foot ladder sitting against the house. Okay, we got a ladder here. It's 11 foot, so that's the length of the ladder. It makes an angle of 63 degrees with the ground. How far is the base? So we're looking for the base here. So I remember the cosine of an angle is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. So in this case, cosine of 63 degrees would be the base over 11. So you multiply both sides by 11. Make sure your calculator is in degree mode. A lot of times the SAT and the AC like to switch between degrees and radians, and that can cause you to make a small mistake on your calculator. But once you do that, you get a basis of 4.99, which is 5. Question 22. In the figure below, QT is parallel to RS. That's not labeled, so I would want to label it on my scratch paper. Lengths of QR and PT are A and B. That is labeled, so I don't need to do that. PQ is a unit length of 1, that's labeled, which defining is the expression for ST. So this is similar triangles, and I can tell that because parallel lines cut by transversal have congruent corresponding angles, and 2 angles are necessary to show 2 triangles are similar. So there's a lot of ways I could go about this. I could do like probably part to part or whole to whole. So let's see what works out. Again, keep in mind, we're looking for S to T. So S to T is part of this side, and then that matches up with A. So I could do X over A as some ratio. And then I could match that up with the whole side. So then that would be to SP, which is x plus b over a plus 1. So that's one option. I could also have done 1 to b, and also do then 1 plus a over b plus x. So those are basically the two ways I could set my triangles. And a key thing, we're trying to solve for x, so let's see what works. So I'm going to cross multiply. So x times a plus 1 is equal to a times x plus b. That's ax plus x is equal to ax plus ab. The ax are the same on both sides, so I can subtract them. And I get x is ab, which is what we're looking for. So that would work. Would the bottom one work? Let's find out. B plus x times 1 is equal to b times 1 plus a. B plus x is equal to b plus a. X is equal to ab, or ba. So that also works. So whichever one you prefer, those would both work. So just remember to do proportional sides for similar triangles and make sure to match the corresponding proportional sides. Question 23. In the figure below, what is the area of the shaded semicircle? Well, we're doing area, so area of a normal circle is pi r squared. So a semicircle is going to be half that. Okay, do I have the radius given? I don't have the radius given, but I do notice I have a right triangle, and so I can do Pythagorean theorem to get the third side. So that's 5, 5, 5 root 2. But there's a trap put in here. That 5 root 2 is the diameter of the semicircle. So we have to divide both sides by 2 to get the radius. All right, now we can plug it in. 1/2 pi times 5 root 2 over 2 squared. And so there's a bunch of things going on here. So let's take it one by one. 5 squared times 2 over 2 squared. Okay, now I see a bunch of things cancel. This 2 cancels with one of these 2's. This 2 can multiply that 2. And 5 squared turns into 25. So we should have 5 squared pi over 4 as the answer. Which is 25 pi over 4, and B is the answer. Okay, question number 24. In the kite ABCD, so kite has 2 consecutive sides, and so those 2 are consecutive. It's also a quadrilateral, so the angles add up to 360. AB and AD are congruent, they told us that, and perpendicular, so we know that this is 90. These opposite angles are the same as well. Right, what's the measure of BCD? Okay, so we're gonna do all the angles in the quadrilateral adds up to 360. All right, so then you get x is equal to 30, and B is your answer. Now, one thing you could definitely do is probably cross off D, because a right angle here looks like that, and so C definitely looks small then. I couldn't tell you if it's 15 or 30 or 45 or so, but definitely it's less than 90, which gives you a 33% chance of guessing it right instead of 25% chance. Question 25. A rectangle with area 98 square feet, so area is normally length times width, so this is equal to 98, has a perimeter. Well, perimeter is usually 2L plus 2W, which is equal to 42. What is the length of the shortest side? Well, I don't know which one's the shortest side, but what we can do is first divide everything by 2 here to make the numbers easier to work with. And then isolate the variable and substitute it into here. So 21 minus W times W is equal to 98. This now looks like a quadratic, so we could graph this with our graphing calculators. We could solve it with our programs on our graphing calculators. We could also do it by hand. So let's multiply this out. And then we always want to set it equal to 0. And then I like to make the quadratic positive. So in this case, I'm going to add the W squared to the other side and subtract the 21W. So that way I get W squared minus 21W plus 98 is equal to 0. Now, if you're doing this by hand, there is a way to kind of help you figure out what are the factors to make 21 and 98. So one, I know that 2 goes into 98 49 times. And then because it's 49, I know that 7 goes in, and that's going to be 2 times 14. And then that's the only options available. So if it is an integer value, it has to be one of these two. Oh, whoops, I wrote 2 times 14. It should be 2 times 7, which is 14. All right, and then we're trying to get 21, which 7 and 14 is 21. So it's W minus 7, W minus 14. So we get two answers, one that's 7, one that's 14. We wanted the shorter side, so it doesn't matter if you had done L or W, they both can same answers. It's just if you pick one is 7, then the other one is 14. So in this case, we're going to pick the 7, and that will be the correct answer. Question 26. Suppose the following statement is true. If X is a duck, then X has feathers. So this is following the if condition, then conclusion process. And usually it involves something called the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. Since we're looking for the one that must be true, we want to focus on the contrapositive, which is the kind of opposite. So if this was if A, then B, the contrapositive would be if not B, then not A. Distractors are typically the converse and the inverse. So the converse is switching the order. So then instead of A, B, you do B, then A. And then the inverse is, as you might guess, the nots. So this would be if not A, then not B. So in a way, you kind of don't want to do the converse or the inverse, but the converse and the inverse. So you want to both flip the statement around and do the negative of it. So let's see if we can find that. So we're looking for not feathers, then not duck. Well, this one, it says not feathers and not duck. So that is the correct answer. Let's look at the other two. A is not duck, then not feathers. That is the inverse, which is sometimes true, but not always true. B is the converse. That is sometimes true, not always true. So they're kind of tricky, but they always kind of follow this template. So keep an eye out for that. Question 27. Polygon ABCD, so it has 4 angles, so it must be a quadrilateral. I'm just drawing a rectangle as a generic. So I'll just do ABCD. Such that AB and CD are parallel, so I can mark these parallel. And the opposites BC and AD are congruent. Okay. Which of the following must be true? Well, it must be a quadrilateral. So it can't be A. Does it have to be a parallelogram? Unfortunately, no, it does not have to be a parallelogram. In order for it to be a parallelogram, the same sides have to be parallel and congruent. What ABCD could have been is it could have been a trapezoid where these two are congruent, but then these two sides are parallel. Now, since it could be a trapezoid, it could also be a parallelogram. It's going to be neither 1 or 2, so the answer is B. Emily has 6 green marbles and 3 purple marbles and 7 blue marbles. So that's a total of 16. She randomly picks a marble, replaces it. That's pretty important. And then randomly picks another marble. What's why that she does not pick 2 blue marbles? And the word not is super important for probability. Because usually with not probability, you want to pick the probability and then do 1 minus that. So how can we do that? Well, what is the probability of her picking 2 blue marbles? Well, the probability of the first blue is going to be 7 out of 16. Now, because she takes that blue marble out, looks at it, then puts it back in the band, then the probability of the second blue is the same, 7 out of 16. And since we want blue and blue, we're going to multiply these together. So that's the probability of 2 blue marbles. But we want not that. So the probability of not 2 blue means that we take 1 minus 49 over 256. And then just eyeballing it really quickly, you can probably guess D because like 200 plus 50 is about 256. But yes, you can also use your calculator to confirm it. Why can't we do it the other way? like find it by just doing not too blue. Well, the thing is you would have to do like green and green or green and purple or purple or purple blue or blue green, just not too blue. So that's kind of why you do want to remember if it has the word not in there, it's a probability. You may want to find the outcome, then subtract it from 1. It's usually faster. All right. Lena draws a line segment and marks it with 5 points. With the ruler, she determines the length of AD and BE are 20 inches. So again, we have AD and we have BE. Which of line must be known to find the length of AE? So we want to find the whole length. So I kind of, if I knew AB or if I knew DE, that would work. What else could help us though? Because I'm assuming since it's question 29, we probably don't have it something that simple. So I don't see AB quickly. I don't see DE. So what do we have available? We have CD as 6. Well, if CD is 6, we would then know AC is 14, but there's still some overlap between that and the blue one. So it doesn't seem quite the best answer right now. What about AC is 14? Well, if AC is 14, then that means that CD has to be 6. But we still don't know what BD, so it seems like it has the same issue as A. How about C? Pick a different color to make it stand out more. BD is 10. All right, if BD is 10, then we know that DE is also 10. And then, oh, because we know BD is 10 here, then that's 10, and then AB is 10. Ah, so that would tell us the whole length is 30. So that did seem to work. Well, we can check the last one to make sure, though. All right, let's see. CE is 16. So by making this 16, then we know that BC is 4. But we still don't know anything about AB still. So that didn't work either. All right, so the answer is C. So, and there's no shortcut here. It's just trying through the different segments and looking for places where the overlap is there. And then if they give you the overlap, that you can work backwards and find the individual solutions. To the nearest tenth, what is the central angle of the pie chart that represents defense spending? So defense spending looks like Defense Department, which is 596 divided by 3,504. You could convert to billions, but the billions would cancel out on top and bottom. And that looks like approximately 1/6 out of 360, which is 60 degrees. So I'm going with probably C. We can confirm that. And that is true. So, but estimation is definitely very helpful in the ACT. It can help you go much faster. Jim cuts 2 cubes of clay in pottery class. If the ratio of the surface areas of 2 cubes is 9:4, what's the ratio of volumes? So this is my similar shapes ratio box, which helps me solve these types of problems on the SAT and ACT. So you either are given a length, a perimeter, area or surface area, and then lastly, volume. So if you're given A to B, then the perimeter would be also A to B. The area and surface area would be A squared to B squared, and the volume would be A cubed to B cubed. So what do we have in this case? Well, they told us that the areas was 9:4. Well, that's supposed to be A squared to B squared. So I could square root both of them, and that would give me the length is 3:2, and the perimeter is 3:2. But we wanted to find the volume. So then we need to cube it. And we get 27/8, which is why the answer is D. Notice how we never found the actual volume of the cube or the surface area of the cube. We just know the ratio between the two figures. So this works a lot for similar shapes. And these problems can be very hard to solve normally because they don't usually give you enough information to solve the actual areas or volumes. So you need to know this. 32. What is the x-intercept of the line that passes these 2 points? Well, there's two ways to do that pretty quickly. Again, find the slope. 4 minus 8 over 5 minus -3. So it's -4 over 8, which is -1/2. And then we do point slope form. -1/2 x minus 5 plus 4. We're looking for the x-intercept, so the y value is 0. -1/2 x minus 5 plus 4. And then I can use SADMEP to solve for x. So I subtract the 4 over, then times by -2, and then add the 5. So that would be 8 plus 5, which is 13. B. There's another interesting way of doing it. So if you graph the values, x and y, you do -3, 8, and 5, 4, you're looking for when the y is 0. So we went down by 4. If you go down by another 4, that means you went up by 8, you go up by 8. So that's a very convenient trick for this question. It doesn't have to work out that way, but it did. But the way I did originally was just using point slope form will always work. And the key thing is that x-intercept, so we knew the y value was 0. Question 33. Oh, we have a line in point slope form. It's reflective of the line y equals x-axis, what is the equation of the resulting line? All right, so what I might want to do first is make it look a little bit more normal. So that's what I like to do. And then basically I start with the point 12, 6. The slope is positive. And again, I can kind of imagine that if this is 12, that would be means it goes down by 9. So from 6 to -3. So we have a graph that looks like kind of like that. Now we're reflecting over the x-axis. So the new line will look something like that. Change the colors a little bit. Okay, so what do I know? Well, I know the slope must be the opposite sign. So it's not going to be positive. They all have -3/4. What about the y-intercept? Well, I know that the y-intercept must be positive. So it can't be negative. So we have 3 or 6. So how can we narrow it down between the two of them? Well, the key is what was the y-intercept for the original graph? Well, if we plug in 0 for x, we would get y equals 3/4 times 0 minus 12 plus 6. So that is going to be -9 plus 6, which is -3. So that was the original. And then we reflect it across, it's going to be positive. And that's why the answer was B. You can also do this on the graphing calculator. But it's a little bit harder to do. Graphing it and making it scratch paper and help visualizing it can help you narrow it down the choices. You could also graph all 5 of these on your graphic calculator and just pick the line that is the reflection of that line. Okay, if A, B, C are positive integers, so again, they have to be greater than 0, because 0 is not positive or negative. What is the parabola opening to the right? Well, I know that y is equal to positive x squared is a normal up parabola. Y equals negative x squared is a normal downward parabola. So it's not going to be either of these two choices. Looking at the next ones, we have basically x is equal to negative y squared and x is equal to positive y squared. So some graphing calculators can let you graph conics. In this case, the TI-84 has a special conics button that lets you do it. And so does the TI-Inspire CX. But in this case, I just remember that, oh, if it's negative, it goes left, where all the negative x values are. And if it's positive, it goes right, where all the positive x values are. So the answer is D. Which of the following system inequalities is represented by the shaded region? Well, this is question 35. So it seems like a very simple topic, but since it's question 35, I expect there to be weird stuff going on here. And at first, I noticed it right away. Instead of doing a normal line like y equals mx plus b, they're doing x is equal to. So that's something I'm probably going to be careful with. Now let's look at the normal stuff. We have a horizontal line, which is y is -2, and we want beneath that, so it's going to be less than. So we're going to cross off that answer, Yay, good. So how about this one? Well, you could spend time making each one look like the same. You could also use a trick where if x is zero, you could solve for the y value, which we know the y value is -3. So then 0 greater than or equal to 3/2 -3 minus 3. Well, that is not going to be equal to 0, so it's not A. How about C? 0 is less than or equal to 2/3 -3 minus 2. Well, the -3 over the 3 will make it -1, so it's close, but that -2 is messing this up. So then the last one is true. It looks exactly the same, but it's -2 plus 2, which is indeed 0. So that's one way of thinking about it. A more advanced way of thinking about it is think about it this way. If it's y equals mx plus b, this is the y-intercept. But if it's x equals ay plus c, this is the x-intercept. And if you look back at the graph, you have an x-intercept of +2. So that would be a very quick way of getting that answer D, even though it's a really weird way of writing it. But I recommend remembering that because that can be helpful for you for future hard tests, hard questions. University Campus Quad has a shape which looks like some weird rectangles with stuff cut out. There's a large oak tree located in the exact diagonal midpoint. How far is the tree from point C? Okay, well, I mean, if I was like estimating it, probably pick one of these three, because the 5 in this diagram looks a little bit too long. But how can we narrow it down? Well, what information do we know? We know that this whole thing is 12, and this is 2. So that means if we cut off here, this is 10 and 2. Okay, so then the midpoint would be 5 this way. How high vertically is it? Well, we know that this is 2 and 5, so then the whole thing is 7 vertically, so then halfway would be 3.5. Okay, well, so we know that this is basically 5 comma 3.5, but how far is that from C? Well, C is going to be 3 comma, looks like it's 7 minus 1 comma 6. So now we have 2 points, 5 comma 3.5 and 3 comma 6. And we're looking for the distance between them, so we're going to do basically Pythagorean theorem. So distance is equal to the square root of the change in the x. So that's 5 minus 3, 5 minus 3, which is 2, then squared, and the change in the y. On the calculator, we get 10.25 for the inside, which is a little bit more than 3 because the square root of 9 is 3, but we can confirm it on our calculator, which is 3.2, and the answer is C. But still, like if you can estimate, like, well, no, it's not D, or you maybe say like, the 2 looks a little bit too small. Like those are all things that maybe can help you narrow it down and then make, I guess, be more educated. All right, a circle is tangent. That means it barely touches the y-axis at 3. Well, that means it's going to be at 0, comma 3. If it crosses through the x-axis at 9, comma 0, what is the equation of the circle? Well, the graph could be a couple different options. So we need to go through 9, comma 0, and we also need it to be tangent. So like hypothetically, it could be like this side, right? Maybe it's slightly different, but well, we could also just check by plugging in the points too to see which ones of them are on the graph as well, which can also be a valuable tool. For example, let's say we plugged in 9, comma 0 for A. So 9 minus 5 is 4 squared. Then 0 minus 2 is -2 squared. And then does that equal 16? Right away, it does not. By the way, I'm going to go straight to D because D has the x minus 5. So that's going to be 4 squared plus 3 squared is equal to 25. That does work. So we could then plug in the same point to B and C, or we could just see if 0, comma 3 works. So I'm going to see if 0, comma 3 works. Just maybe we get lucky. So you get -5 squared plus 0 squared is equal to 25. Both points work. That point is at 5, comma 3. Yeah, I mean, so that seemed very reasonable. And if you graph all four of these using your graphing calculator, you can also see it visually that that is the answer. So I hope that helped make some sense of it. But yeah, you could. There's other ways you could graph each one of these and confirm it. Each of these is the r radius squared, so you could plug in the radius 4 and then graph it and see if it, which ones have overlap. These would have radius 5. So a couple ways of doing it, but I found that sometimes just taking the points can plug it in, especially since the graphs can be there could be multiple graphs that have the same data. Quadrant ABCD lies entirely in quadrant 2. It's reflected across the line y equals x. So this is very interesting. If you have a point A, comma B here, and you reflect across the line y equals x, the point switches to now B, comma A. It's almost like the y becomes the x and the x becomes the y. And that's a good way to remember it. And you see y equals x or x equals y. If point B has the coordinate of negative mn, what is the coordinate's other B? So you switch the order. So it's going to be n, comma, negative m. And that would be D. Michelle Mouse is sitting at a park enjoying a discarded sandwich lying on the ground. She sees a hawk perched at the top of the tree that's 20 foot east, 10 foot north of her, and the tree is 15 feet tall. So this is going to be a kind of a 3D perspective. 24 to the right, let's just say 10 is up. But then we want to go to the height, which is going to be 15. So how do we solve this type of problems? Well, what we do is we do Pythagorean theorem twice. So what you actually want to do to find the height or the distance between them is you do Pythagorean of the base. And I know that Pythagorean theorem, that's 5, 12, 13. But since you need to multiply by 2 to get 26. And then you do Pythagorean theorem one more time. 26 squared plus 15 squared is equal to the distance squared. And on the calculator, that gives us 901. And you square root that, it's about 300. Not 330. Square 900 is 30. There you go. Perfect. Oh yeah. It's a tricky problem, especially with a 3D perspective. But definitely you basically do the base and then you do the height. All right, we got 6 more to go. Question number 40. Starting from home, Jackie walked towards school at a constant rate, so that's linear. After 5 minutes, she stops for 5 minutes, so her speed goes down to 0, or her distance would say constant. Realizing she's running late, she walks the rest of the school at double the speed, so it should be twice as steep as before. What could show it? All right, so we have a normal rate and then flat. That seems good. A normal rate, that seems flat. Normal rate, then it just disappears, so it's not C. And this right here is normal rate, flat, but then returning home. So she didn't return home, she went faster to get to school. All right, so what else could it be? Well, we're looking at A and B. And again, there's the actual values, there are no values, but we want to look at the slope. B starts off fast and then stops and then goes slow. A starts slow, goes so it stops the chat and then goes fast. So that's why the answer was A. Which of the following represents the graph y equals cosine of x minus pi over 2? Well, first off, that's just kind of like looks like y equals sine x. But you can graph this on your graphing calculator, but the answer should be A. This should be a sine graph that's been shifted up. This is the original cosine graph. And then this would be more rapid, but that's also a cosine graph that's more rapid. So it's not D. All right, question 42. If tan theta is equal to 3/4 and pi is between these numbers, which the following could be a coordinate of ray M? Well, one thing I know about tan in this area is that tan is positive, but the points should be negative, negative. So not A, not B, but both of these seem pretty good. So let's just try graphing those two out. So if I graph negative 12 comma negative 9, then the tan of that will be negative 9 over negative 12, which is 3/4. That seems pretty good. What if I do the other one? So that would be left, -3, and then down, -4. Well, the tan of that one would be -4/3 because tan is opposite over adjacent. So if you pick D, you got them accidentally flipped around. But as a good reminder, for trig ratios, the number there is not have to be the actual number. It's just a ratio between the two of them. 3 more to go. Question 43. The city of Iva is attempting to tunnel through the mountain. So we got one tunnel here, and that way we don't have to drive all the way up. No, I'm still in the call. Again, I got this class starts at 2:15, right? It's in that room. Sorry, Reed, I gotta restart that question. Question number 43. So the city of Iva is attempting to tunnel through the mountains because we don't have to drive all the way up the mountain and then all the way back down the mountain. If the town looked at the distance from the base of the mountain and back up down, as well as the angle between the sides, what formula would most directly be used to calculate it? Well, we have side, angle, side. So what's telling me to do is the law of cosine. And we don't even have to solve it. We just have to pick which one of these we want. Law of sines is helpful if you have an angle side pair, and Pythagorean theorem is helpful if it's a right triangle. Question 44. Which of the following is the equivalent of this? Well, one thing you could definitely do is just plug in a bunch of different random numbers for the angle and see which one works out eventually. However, if you multiply it out, you get cosine squared theta plus 2 sine theta cosine theta plus sine squared theta minus 2, sorry for my handwriting, sine squared theta minus 2 cosine theta sine theta. And something beautiful happens. Things go away. And then you're left with cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta, which is the fundamental theorem of trigonometry. And that is always equal to 1. So definitely plug in random numbers or know your identities. Question 45, the final math question. Thank you for staying here so long, but yes, we will finish this off with a bang. All right, if triangle ABC is below, angle BC is 42, that's labeled, and angle A is 58, which is labeled, and AC is 7. So in this case, we do not have side, angle, side, or side, 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 so we're probably going to be using law of sines. Now, one thing I noticed, if I have two angles, I could do the sum of the angles in a triangle to find the missing angle. And so then 180 minus 100 is equal to 80. Just saying if you needed that. But we're looking for BC, so we go straight to the answer. Law of sine says that if you take the sine of A, it matches up with A, and the sine of B must match up with B. So in this case, the sine of 58 degrees matches up with the question mark, and then the sine of 42 matches up with 7. Now I'm going to get rid of the question mark and put a variable there. And in order to get x by itself, we can cross multiply. And so you get sine of 758 is equal to x sine 42. And then divide both sides of sine 42. And then we are at the home front. Sine of 758 over sine 42. Boom, the answer is A. And mic drop. So thank you for staying with me, and hopefully you found that review helpful. And next up will be the science section. See you in the next one. Bye.